right, welcome to our online parent night. We see a few of you are signed in, and people are kind of joining as the time passes. We'll just start with introductions. We got to meet some of you at open house, and some we've had brothers and sisters before. But my name is Mr. Bessler,
Mrs. Warnick, and Mrs. Van Orsdale.
So today, this is going to be a brief, more introduction into what you can expect for your child in 5th grade. So we've already been in school a few weeks now, so expectations and routines have been taught, and students kind of know what's going on. So now it's time for us to get you guys on the same page with us. So we're going to go through and just talk about our content areas, some of the things that you can expect to see coming home this year. And if you have any questions, you can send them over Class Dojo, and we'll get to your homeroom teacher, and we'll get those, and we'll try to answer those as we go. If you're watching this later, if you have any other questions, feel free to email or shoot us a message on Class Dojo. So I teach the social studies block, and I'm just going to spend a minute just kind of talking about what you can expect to see at home from social studies, and then the others will do the same. So in social studies this year, we cover pretty much American history from the beginning until now. We start, you're probably familiar with our geography unit that we've already started, and we'll just roll through all of our units accordingly. So we have something different this year. If you've had a 5th grader in the past, they've not had access to an online textbook, but students do have access to the online textbook at school and at home, and we actually use it in school every day. So you may have seen in newsletters or seen it in agendas, www.teachtci.com. That is simply just the website that students access the textbook from. So we'll use those words interchangeably. We will call it History Live, we mean teachtci.com. We'll call it your textbook, we mean teachtci.com. So we work in the online textbook every day. That's where we read, that's where we take our notes, some of our notes, and it's where we have our class discussions. And then we also use a lot of Google Classroom tools. So in regard to what you can expect at home, students have access to those usernames and passwords. So it would be great if parents can get on board and at least log in and get an idea of what your child is looking at. And so that way we're all on the same page, because it is different having some of these online tools, but we're still learning the same things just using an online platform. If you have any questions about social studies throughout the year, don't hesitate to jump in and ask. You can send me a message on Dojo or email me.
All right, I will talk about math. The way that our math block is organized, it's an hour and 20 minutes. So the first 45 minutes is kind of like a mini lesson on what it is. So whatever the skill is. So I teach something, the kids practice it, partnerships, individually, and then they're given an exit slip at the end of the lesson. And based on how they do on their exit slip will determine where they go in centers. So we do centers every day. They come see me every day in their center. If they've missed the exit slip, it's the reteaching what they did wrong, some more extra practice with that skill. If they got it correct, then we're doing some higher level thinking using that same skill. And then they'll always visit a technology center. I've talked about it in the newsletter, and you've probably seen your child try to log on at home. There's Connect Ed, which is something that we visit in our centers. It is basically the math textbook online. It syncs up with the lesson that we did in class that day. So if they are absent, that is a great tool for them to log on and see. There's tutorial videos, there is the journal pages, there are games, it's everything is there. It's the one-stop shop. So they get in, I assign them a game every day to do in a center. You probably heard them talk about Prodigy. They got some usernames and passwords for those on Friday. That is something that they really do like, but that's going to be more of like a rewards base. They might be able to do Prodigy in their centers on Fridays. It is it's aligned with the standards, and it does give them assessment based on how they do. But they get to earn points and tickets and buy things. They can probably tell you more about it than I can, but they're really motivated by that. So you will see if they ask, they can get on Prodigy. It is a great tool to reinforce math skills and concepts. So they visit a technology center every day in my class, and then they work in their math journals, again working on the same skill and sometimes working on math boxes. So that is how our math block is set up every day, 45 minute lesson, the exit slip, and then we go into about 30 minutes of centers. You should not see homework coming home. We typically do that within one of the centers. Unless they do not do what they should be doing in class and working with us, then they should not have homework. But if they chose to play around during centers and they didn't complete some things, then you might see homework come home. The only typical homework you will see is study guides, and you're seeing that right now. They got sent home on Friday for a test this Friday. So they're given a couple of questions they need to do nightly, which is recorded in their agendas, and then we go over that at the beginning of class. So I believe tonight they had to do 6 through 10, so when they come into class tomorrow, we'll go over 6 through 10, so on and so forth. So we break it apart throughout the course of the week to help us review. That way they can ask any questions, I can clear up any misconceptions, and then they have that to use as a studying tool. So they are expected to do their study guide. It is only a couple questions per night. If they're looking for things to do and to practice at home, ConnectEd, like I said, is a great resource. They can play the games, and it also has some extra practice pages on there. They have a toolkit. Everything is basically there for them. But if you have questions about math, in the grade book you will see exit slip points. They should be getting points for exit slips every day, because even if they miss it during the lesson, they come back to me and we reteach it and we go through it. So as long as they're reworking, they're working in my center with me, they should be getting a point for exit slips every day. I think that's math in a nutshell. So I will turn it over to Mrs. Warnick.
All right, I teach reading to your students, and the way we structure reading is on Monday, or in this case Tuesday, because we had a short week. It is our front loading, so that's when I teach the skills that we'll be using that week. The comprehension skills, we'll go over the vocabulary skills, we'll try to get to the vocabulary words. We do not do spelling tests, but we go over everything that we're going to need, the skills we'll need for the week, and we take a lot of notes on that first day. And you'll see that in their red reading notebooks if they take that home with them to finish anything. And then what we do from there on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll still do a little bit of teaching, we'll do some mini lessons, and then we go into our centers. We do 4 centers a week. We'll do a comprehension with the comprehension skill of the week, vocabulary. There's always a center where students read with me. That's my opportunity to do small group reading at your student's own personal level. And then there'll be one other center of some sort, and that's where I'll do whatever concept I'm seeing they're struggling with. We try to always do a computer center. We'll use Pearson Realize, which you'll see students come home with their login for that inside their agenda. I do ask that every week students take Monday evening and read their story on Pearson Realize. I do offer access to the textbooks if they want to bring it home, but the access to the book is available on Pearson Realize, so I try to utilize that as much as possible so they're not lugging the big book back and forth. We do just keep a class set of books in the desk at school because they are transitioning between all 3 of our rooms. We don't want them carrying any more than they have to. So Pearson Realize online is really what we like them to utilize for that. As far as homework goes, they will have that reading on Mondays. I do have something I call Lucky Listener, where they are asked to read a short fluency passage to 10 people throughout the week. It is literally less than a minute long, and that is really just to try to gain more fluency in their reading. It helps them to put words together into phrases rather than reading it very robotically. So that's something that we started this week. You'll probably see them come home with it. They were really excited to do it because I do offer incentives, like whoever can, out of the 60 fifth graders, whoever can have it read the most times with the most signatures gets a prize, and different things like that, just to keep them wanting to read and building that skill that's super important at this age. The other part of homework you might see is on Thursday evenings, they'll probably come home with a review sheet. This is something we always start in class, either at a center or whole group, and that's all of our concepts for the week, just making sure they have them all, they know what's expected of them on the test. And those review sheets are very closely aligned with the test. I tell them every week, if they have everything right on that review sheet, they're going to be fine on the test. And we saw a big jump from week 1 to week 2 on their test scores for those that actually completed the review sheet. I do offer 5 bonus points for review sheets turned in completed on Friday. Like I said, they have some time in class, and most of them only had 5 or 10 minutes to finish it up at home. All answers to the review sheets can always be found in their red reading notebooks. So that's that. And every Friday we have our tests. Our test consists of 2 parts. There's a multiple choice that's always completed on the computer, either a laptop or a desktop in my classroom, and then an ERQ, extended response question. I know some parents have had questions on this because they see in Infinite Campus that their child is failing an assignment. If your child is failing an assignment and it's an ERQ, the reason that they're failing this is because ERQs are only out of 4 points. So if a student gets 2 out of the 4 points on an ERQ, it's technically failing, but really it's just because I separate it out from the multiple choice. I want to be able to see the data of how they're growing on an ERQ. And when it's only a 4-point question, it's 2 points, it's 50%, but really they're not doing badly. We're expecting them not to have it perfect right now. We're going to be growing as we go. So this week in particular, we really focused on the explain part of the ERQ. We knew how to find evidence, but now we're working to connect it back to explain back to the question, or the prompt. So that was their skill. Some of them got it somewhat. We're not perfect yet, which we don't expect them to be. So that is our reading block in a nutshell. The other part that I teach is writing. The way we do writing this year is a little bit different than we've ever done it in the past. We do a whole group, so all 3 classes of 5th grade are together in one classroom for the first 30 minutes of the day from 8:30 to 9, and we take that time to teach whole group with one. I'm primarily teaching, but then Mr. Bessler and Ms. Van Orsdale are in there with me reinforcing, constantly walking around, constantly monitoring, and we find that this helps us have a better visual on students at the moment. So we can see, this kiddo isn't getting this particular concept, have our eyes on him for whatever it is. And so we'll be continuing that, and I think that's about it for content areas.
Something when you were talking about that I didn't bring up yet, but after assessments, right answer discovery.
Right answer discovery, yes.
So formerly known as wrong answer analysis. So you will be seeing that after reading and math tests, and I assume social studies. We just haven't gotten to that point yet, but we will kind of be modeling what that will look like after our first assessment, so they can earn points back for questions that they have missed. So be looking for that to come home as well.
And I did not mention when we were talking about social studies study guides, those look a little different than they do in math and reading and writing, simply because when we start a unit, we're covering pretty much the same content throughout the unit, and sometimes in reading the skills jump around, sometimes in math the skills jump around. So I like to send my study guides home early in the unit, within the first few days typically, so it gives students an opportunity to be able to work on the study guide as we go. And I had some Dojo questions about that. So the study guide, I had questions about due dates. The study guide is technically due on test day. But I don't collect the study guide for a grade. The study guide goes as a bonus point for the assessment. So we've been talking about that almost every day in regard to the study guide. But the study guide is a tool for them to prepare for the assessment, and it looks a lot like the test. So I just wanted to make sure that I clarified that. Okay, moving out of content areas and just talking about some other things. We, in 5th grade, we do a lot of fundraising throughout the year, and that fundraising requires your help. Mrs. Van Orsdale is going to elaborate a little bit more on field trips here in just a few minutes, but just some fundraisers that you can look for, and just so that you know that they're coming up. We are going to be shipped our World's Finest Chocolate here in the next few weeks. Last year we did a World's Finest Chocolate fundraiser to help sponsor the 5th grade class trip, and we did really well. It's an easy fundraiser, and we make 50% of the profit. So we make $30 for every box of candy sold. So we did really well last year with World's Finest. More information will come home about that. 5th grade always runs the Halloween dance and the Valentine dance, as well as the Beta Club, which hasn't been announced yet, but more information to come on the Beta Club. But the Beta Club students always help with those 2 dances as well, and we typically need parent volunteers to come in and just kind of help monitor things and help run stations and stuff like that. And then 5th grade and Beta Club will be doing the Spirit Wear order this year before Christmas, so you'll see that come home probably in the next few weeks. But that'll go to the whole school. We don't need as many parent volunteers for that, but I'd just like to let people know that money is coming to the 5th grade class trip. And what else do we do? Is that it? That's all we're doing this year. Yes, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that is a good segue into the field trips that we're going to take this year. Mrs. Van Orsdale is going to chat a little bit about what you can expect for those.
Yeah, so we have some fun educational opportunities for your kids planned this year. The first thing I wanted to make note of is we've noticed this in years past. If you have signed up for a volunteer card when your child was in kindergarten, it likely has expired. I don't know the shelf life on them, but I think they might be 5 years. So you might just want to check on that before it's too late, because it does take a couple of weeks to process. So if you're unsure, just call the office and Lori can help you with that.
Mrs. Van Orsdale, can I just chime in?
Sure.
Last year we did have some parent volunteers who wanted to come on our class trip with us who didn't have a volunteer card and it expired, and we couldn't get it back soon enough for them to be able to come. So we can't express how important that card is if you want to chaperone field trips this year. So call the office. Ms. Bosom will be happy to check and see if you need an update.
So we have a field trip planned the end of September. The date is yet to be finalized, but we will be going to, it's called Grow It, Eat It, Wear It. We'll go to the Alexandria Fairgrounds. I don't believe they asked for volunteers for that one, but I do believe we're going to some musical concerts, a couple of field trips that are planned in the fall, and then our big trip is obviously Camp Joy, which will be in March. The date will be coming out sooner once we have it finalized, but that is kind of our plan, and we will let you know about that. But we like to do a lot of fundraising, therefore the cost of our field trips is really minimal. I don't think we really have to pay for a whole lot. It covers the bus, it covers everything by all of our fundraising, so we do try to get a jump start on that very early in the year. But just check out your volunteer cards just to make sure that they are still good and will be good throughout the year.
I did get a question about tests, where you can see your students' test results. You can access your students' test results on Pearson Realize. There'll be a red box on the front page that they go into, and you can click on that and you can go back and see all the assignments that your student has completed. So we'll do some vocabulary activities in class even, or in centers, and you'll be able to go on there and see how they did on everything, including tests. The only things that will come home graded periodically will be ERQs, extended response questions. I try to go over them with students, so like I have them graded now so you can see the grade on Infinite Campus, but they won't come home until probably Thursday. We'll go over those and then they'll take them home. So that answers that question. Moving along to newsletters. These are something that as a team we put out once a week. I know parents were having some trouble with it today. I think I don't know if Google went through an update or something, but we do send those out through Class Dojo. If at any point you're not getting those, let us know. Or if you don't have, consistent internet access, we can always send home a printed copy, but we do try to save trees and just send them home through Class Dojo. It's easy for you. You can click on the link, open it up right there on your phone. Super easy. Please make sure that you're checking those every week. We do try to put any updates in there. We put test dates on there. We try to make sure you get the links to, this week we have all of our links on there for Pearson Realize and Connect Ed, and the social studies textbook, so that they're right there for you, easy access. So please make sure you're checking that every week. We send those out primarily on Monday afternoon. This week it was Tuesday afternoon, not having school yesterday.
Okay, so moving right along, just to discussing technology use in 5th grade. 5th graders will be introduced and using a lot of technology in their classes this school year. So I've already had a few questions about how students can access things. Their student login information is in the back cover of their agenda for most of the programs that they log into. Their login information for their username and password to access things at school and their email, they also have those written down in their the back of their agendas as well. but in regard to technology, most of the tools that we use in the classroom are accessible on all different kinds of devices, especially the apps and things for Google. And so at home, students can use a laptop, they can use an iPad. If a parent has a phone, students can log in and complete or study or do activities, whatever needs to be done. Now we did, as mentioned, there isn't a ton of homework coming home, but we do ask that students, if they need to study and they have something that's in Pearson Realize, or they have something, Mrs. Van Dorstad wants them to practice a game, or I am asking them to study their notes, that if there is a device available at home, that they can get onto that device. And most of our programs work on several devices. If there is an issue with that, we have a lot of students that walk in at right at 8 o'clock, and between 8 and 8:15, that is a great time for students to be able to access anything on the internet that they can't access at home. So if they need to study, they need to work on a study guide, they need to read the story, whatever their homework might be, that morning time is a great time for that, as well as our study hall time in the afternoon. Not enough students at this point in the year, in my opinion, are utilizing their study hall time. It's kind of a craziness because people are going and packing up and they're going to do their afternoon jobs and they're everywhere. So just mention to your child that is a good time for them to be able to get stuff out of the way before they get home, especially if they have a late bus. I got off on a tangent. Typical. But they have all of those student logins. No one needs to go out and buy any devices to be successful in 5th grade. By all means, if you feel like your family is ready and you would like to go purchase something, by all means go ahead and do that. But we're not asking anybody to go out and buy anything. I know there were some questions about that. So at this point, that is not a requirement or not expected. But again, we're using technology all the time, and as students get more proficient in Google, they'll eventually have a Google Classroom for their reading class, for their writing class, and for their math class. So they're learning how to use the tools in my class, and hopefully within the next few weeks, months or so, they'll have access to all of those things across those platforms in all of their classes. Communication.
Okay, so as always, if there is ever a question, please come and contact us. We are here. So if you write a note in the agenda, they check in with us every morning, we will see that. Shoot us an email, a phone call, Dojo, anything to reach us. We will get back with you within 24 hours. So if there's any time that you need us, we are not always by our computer, so if it is like a quick, like a bus change or so-and-so needs to ride home with so-and-so, we can't guarantee that we're going to see that by the end of the day. So if it is like a transportation change, please call the office for that, because they will put that into our folder, so we will be aware of that. But if it's a question regarding content areas, or I saw this, come home, can you explain this? Please, don't be afraid to come and ask us about that. I'm the math teacher, ELA and writing, and then social studies. So if you see something in Infinite Campus that is, let's say, social studies related, I don't have access to that. So even if it's a student in my class, the question should be geared towards Mr. Bessler. And I can always forward that along, or whatever the case may be. But we only have access to the content areas that we teach in the grade book. So I cannot necessarily see all of my students' grades because I don't teach those content areas. But please utilize the communication devices and whatever works best for you. We are here to support your children and make them successful not only in 5th grade, but as a transition to middle school. So
We'll say that a lot this year.
yes. Yeah. But we're here for you. So if you need anything, come find us.
And going right along with that, I do want to touch more on Class Dojo. Class Dojo is a great communication tool. I check it every morning. I make sure that I know what's going on, but we also utilize that for our behavior rewards and our behavior plans. So what we do for Class Dojo, all 3 of us have access to your students' Class Dojo, and we change our Class Dojo throughout the day. So when I'm with Mr. Bessler's homeroom class, I have his dojo class up so that I can give them points when they do something great, or communicate with you if I need to, or unfortunately sometimes have to take away a point if they do something that doesn't adhere with our expectations here at Reiley. So a couple things to keep in mind. We do utilize Class Dojo for both reward and behavior correction. So please don't worry about if your child loses 1 point here or there. That's expected. You know, it is a reminder tool that we can say, you know, you're just not following the hallway expectations. You know, get yourself in check, and students are able to come back from that. So please don't worry about nitpicking every little point here and there. However, if you do see a consistent pattern that we're having to take points for a specific behavior often, that is kind of our message that, you know, that we want to make sure that child is going to be successful, and so you may want to address that issue at home with them. A couple things to keep in mind there. We do reset our points each day at lunchtime. We do that because right after lunch we have recess. So after recess, they get a new fresh start to the next day. So it goes from the afternoon all the way to the next day at lunch. And we do that, if your child does lose a point, they do have to walk 2 laps for us during recess. And that's just our way of, you know, really rewarding the kids who are keeping themselves in check, and they get their full time of recess. And it also gives us a chance to meet with those kids who aren't meeting their expectations, and just kind of check in with them, like, what's going on, you know, what is it that you're having trouble with, can we find a solution to this? It really helps us to get in check with that. We do also provide rewards as students behave correctly. So we do, every week, we do 15 minutes of extra recess for students who are maintaining a high enough percentage of their dojo points. So we do kind of step that up as the year goes on, but if you have, you know, is it
85 for trimester 1, and then I think we go up to 90, and then 95 for 2 and 3.
So if you have 85% positive points this week, on Friday you get 15 minutes of extra recess. And that's just to incentivize that great behavior, keeping the expectations. We do tell our students all the time they are role models, they are the 5th graders, they need to act like it, so we expect that from them. And then in addition to Friday reward, 15 minutes, we also do a monthly buyout. So on Friday, you may have heard your child come home talking about that we had popsicles and afternoon recess, where we got all of our curriculum taken care of in the morning, and those students who had enough points got to buy themselves a popsicle and afternoon outside with having extra recess. They loved it. It was great, and students had a lot of fun, and we like rewarding students because they kept the expectations. So you will see at the end of each month, we will do some kind of buyout with their points.
One thing before we close.
Sure.
I just wanted to mention Infinite Campus emails that come to parents to automatically generate on Mondays, because I already had a question this morning. So Infinite Campus on Mondays generates emails based off of grades in the grade book. So it goes 2 ways, and it gets confused sometimes. So I just want to make sure that we clarify. There's 2 separate emails that come out. There is a missing assignment email and a failing assignment email. They're 2 different types of assignments. So if here in a few weeks, students are going to be learning how to log in and use Infinite Campus, so they're going to be able to take responsibility for their own grades. But at this point, you're still going to be getting those emails. So if you have a question about those activities, please try to direct them to us based off of what the email was, if it was failing or was missing. Because if somebody comes to me and says, I had a missing assignment, but it was actually failing, it's kind of harder for me to find in the grade book, especially as we get later in the trimester. So just those I think came out yesterday. So you'll start to see those, and they come every Monday until the grade is fixed in the grade book. So just as an FYI.
Okay, well, we thank you for tuning in and listening to our live YouTube Parent Night. A lot of the things we referenced were found in the 5th grade rules and guidelines that all parents signed off on, and your child has a copy of those. And if you have any questions or something we did not address or was unclear, please contact us, and we will take care of that for you. So, thanks for tuning in.
All right, thank you.
See you later.